Americans.
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting, just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding this information? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect, it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
Colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organization should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
we become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. You can't agree to that. How are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over our cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email. And all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
This is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire We had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was
already
still in
done.
Parliament, I...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be in the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean to the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped. Yes, sir. At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone, or to take the nation to war partway, or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector. You didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me, and he said, sir, you got to come in and talk to me a sec. He says, we've made the decision we're going to war with Iraq. I said, we're going to war with Iraq? Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show. But if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
You are.
Okay, good to go.
All right, going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into Redacted on this Wednesday. We're just moving our water bottles around. I am Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And on this show, we cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores, or we really try to navigate through all of the propaganda. And oh my God, the propaganda is so thick, you can literally cut it with like a butter knife right now. So we're going to dive into that because our top story tonight, we're going to look at how is Hamas actually using the hospitals as human shields, building their infrastructure underneath these hospitals, and that's the justification to go in and attack and kill nurses and actually kill doctors, snipers, actually killing nurses through windows. Like, is that what we are doing now as human beings? So we're going to look at the very latest as this Israeli raid into the Al-Shifa hospital unfolded over the past few hours.
Plus, we're going to go to Poland, which is pretty much fed up with Ukraine, has been for a long time. Excuse me, I have a lozenge.
You want me to take it? Okay.
This is not going well.
Yeah.
I thought that, so I've had this voice issue all week. I'm going to stick with it because we also want to go over a report that the military did about civilian killings in Somalia. It's not a happy report, and we're going to go over that when my lozenge is done.
All right. All of that
embarrassing.
All of that and more as Redacted starts right now. Good evening, everyone.
Note to self, you can't do a show with a lozenge in your mouth. This doesn't work. So you're still stuck with this voice. I apologize, you guys.
Yeah, it'd be hard to broadcast with one of those, like a fisherman's friend. My friend, one of my friends in Canada, he loves using like a fisherman's friend. You ever eat fisherman's friends? Do you guys ever eat a fisherman's friend?
Oh,
yeah, they're like.
But I also have
kind of like an Altoid.
Yeah, it's like a lozenge, like a throat lozenge.
Oh.
My friend used to eat those in school all the time.
No,
it's like you're out on the ocean, you're cold, your throat is sore. You're a hardy fisherman, so you need a fisherman's friend. You swallow it. It's supposed to be.
I don't
it's
know.
supposed to be good.
When I was at CBS,
like
I did
licorice.
once get hiccups on the air, and that's also embarrassing.
Well, none of that tonight. You know what is embarrassing, though? We're going to get to the news here in a second, but, we're human beings. We like to have fun, and we need some lightheartedness because God knows the world is crazy enough in this crazy clown world that we're living in. So earlier this afternoon, but don't play it just yet, Philip, but earlier this afternoon, my dog Grover, our dog Grover, was like barking like crazy outside. I'm like, what? He never barks like this. I'm like, what is going on? He's a mini pincher, so he's like bred to like dig for things, And I was like, what the heck is going on here? I've never seen him do this before. And he was barking like crazy for like 30 minutes. I was on a phone call.
No, try 2 hours and 30 minutes.
No, but yeah. Then I went out and I'm like, what's going on? This was after like 30 minutes, and he had discovered a porcupine. And he just it literally will not stop. And so if you hear, this is 4 hours ago now. He's still out there.
He's still out there.
He's still out there.
And
I'm like, come in. And he will not stop. I can't get him to come in. There's a porcupine that he's obsessed with. Here he is. Here's just a little glimpse of this.
Grover, relax.
And he's built like a moat around the porcupine. He's like digging. And I think we have another one here too. Like he's literally dug like a moat around the porcupine.
That porcupine is being very chill about the whole thing.
Well, his quills are up. He's like, this dog will go away or will...
He's like, at some point...
or rue the day.
And then he's like, let me get these branches out of here. I need to get these branches out of here to do my work. I need to get this out of here. I'm clearing the brush. I got to get in here to this porcupine.
He just can't handle it.
So anyway, there he is. That's Grover. So if during the show you literally hear out the window of the studio here, you hear the dog, that he's going to be going all night for this. He'll probably come in tonight with quills all over his nose.
He came in, lapped up all the water in his bowl, and went right back.
Did he really?
He was so dry. He needs a fisherman's friend.
He does need a fisherman's friend. He's like, I need to get out there and do this.
All right. Well,
all
that's
right.
the kind of fun that you can expect all here on the show. Also, we have some fun on the Redacted newsletter. I'm going to tell you about that before we get going. The Redacted newsletter can be found at redacted.inc. It's a daily newsletter sent to your email, and it is full of the information we bring you in this show and more. There's usually some kind of fun tidbits, like Grover and the porcupine, or someone in the chat says it's a hedgehog.
Oh, hedgehog.
Okay. Do hedgehogs also have this spiky quill? Anyway,
Yes,
we're
they
not
do.
zoologists, but we do deliver news to you for free in the Redacted newsletter. There's no upsell. It's not like you subscribe to it and then we ask you to subscribe to another layer of it. You get it all, just like this show. It's totally free. It comes out every weekday, Monday through Thursday, the same days that this show comes out.
So it's disinformation. It was a hedgehog. Okay. All right. I don't know my fluffy quilled rodents.
Right. It's,
Like I should, I guess.
I was
know.
going to say it didn't look
Isn't
like a
it an
porcupine, but
I just
thought maybe
assumed
they were different in
I wasn't
person.
going to stick my hand in there to find out what the hell it is. But people were saying, like, you got to stop your dog. Why? He's been out there for 5 hours. He'll sleep like a champ tonight. Why do I have to stop him?
What should he not be doing?
I don't know. Let me know why I should stop him. But
He's not going to eat it or anything.
yeah, I don't know.
I don't
All right.
think any animals will get hurt in this footage.
I don't think so. All right, let's get to your top story. Let's talk about this. So not long ago, a top-ranking, I pull out my wrong notes here because I'm worried about hedgehogs. Excuse me here. Let's
That
pull
really
up this.
threw you.
I know.
That we don't know the difference between a hedgehog and a
I know. I'm like upset about that. I'm sorry. All my Sonic the Hedgehog game playing. I would have thought I would have got that. Okay, let's get to it. Well, Hamas is using hospitals as human shields while children sleep in incubators above ground. That's what we're being told. That's what you're being led to believe. So is that true? Hamas is below ground in their headquarters carrying out their plans. And above them are maternity wards and children's wings. So how do we know this? Well, because the CIA and Israel are telling us this. The CIA actively feeding talking points to the Pentagon spokespeople to tell us all of this. So we've got to believe that, right? I mean, don't you believe that? You should believe the CIA. You should believe Israel. They're very, very honest. So naturally, of course, Israel and the United States have to attack these hospitals because Hamas is below them, right? That's the thought process here, even though it's a war crime and a violation of international law to attack a hospital. It's a violation of international law to do that. And the United States president, you might know the United States president, his name is Benjamin Netanyahu. When he was in, he is the leader of the free world. Here he is delivering his State of the Union address in front of Congress in the United States. He's doubling down on these attacks, calling the dead Palestinians in these hospitals collateral damage. Collateral damage. What is collateral damage in all of this? So U.S. President Netanyahu says collateral damage. We had to do it. Collateral damage. That's unbelievable. Sorry to the kids and the patients that are in those hospitals right now. It has to be this way. They're collateral damage. Sorry to the children in incubators. It has to be this way. They're collateral damage. This is in a nutshell what the United States and Israel are claiming at this hour. Hamas built tunnels and bunkers and operating under hospitals. So here's the question. Should we believe the CIA? Do you guys believe the CIA? Let me know in the comments below. After all, the CIA doesn't lie for a living at all. Here is the former head of the CIA, Mike Pompeo, talking about, he's at West Point Academy, explaining exactly how the CIA operates.
But in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like
so
we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
Oh, okay. Fun little side note today, by the way, just a fun little quick aside. Mike Pompeo, the former CIA director, U.S. Secretary of State, will take a seat on the board of directors of one of the largest mobile operators in Ukraine. Because of course he is. You see how all this works, by the way? So you warmonger, and then you get a well-paying job in the country you warmongered.
Optics be damned.
It doesn't matter. So where have I heard all of this bad guys targeting hospitals and maternity wards language before? Oh, right. In Ukraine. Russia targeting moms who are delivering babies in hospitals. That's what Putin likes to do. That's like when Putin wakes up in the morning, his whole plan is, where can I find moms that are about to give birth? I'd like to target them. CNN and the New York Times were all over that story, Mariupol. Let's get pictures of moms being carried out of the hospitals on stretchers. Here's the CNN special report on how Putin targets women in maternity wards. But that story, it didn't matter that this story was fake news. It was totally debunked, by the way. In fact, it was debunked by multiple independent journalists, but also from the women who were in the maternity ward and said it was false.
And the New York Times actually said we cannot confirm this at the time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe then you shouldn't say that we're going to just run with the story then.
Oh, yeah.
That's just an idea. But the story, that doesn't matter because the damage was already done then, of course, once the story, it painted Putin as a mom killer and all of this, and that they would target hospitals in this way in maternity wards. Or maybe it was the tear-jerking testimony from a young girl that I've heard before about Saddam Hussein and Iraqi soldiers killing babies in incubators.
One small problem. There never were any.
While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, took the incubators, and left the children to die on the cold floor.
Oh, man. So Iraqi soldiers came in and were literally taking Kuwaiti babies out of incubators? They're so warm in there, and they need to be in there, and they're just putting them on the cold floor to get hypothermia and die. That's awful.
Once you said they were taking the incubators, what the heck were they taking incubators for? I mean, that makes no sense.
You know what the Iraqis were like. I mean, this is why we needed to go to war, right? This is exactly... That sounds convincing. She seems convincing. We should go to war for 10 years and kill 1 million Iraqis. But was that true?
One small problem. There never were any incubator baby deaths. Not one. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's investigative flagship program, The Fifth Estate, reveals the girl to be the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter, given her lines and coached in acting by the giant American PR firm Hill & Knowlton. It's one phase in a $10 million joint U.S.-Kuwaiti campaign of deception.
David Friedman, the former U.S. ambassador to Israel, says it's been proven with certainty, those are his words, that the Hamas headquarters is under the Al-Shifa hospital. Asked for sources about all of this, and show us proof of this. Can you just show us proof? We just want to, we're journalists. We'd like to see the proof. Show us the evidence of this, and then we will report it as such. But we're not just going to take your intelligence community mouthpieces who are spilling this, and we're going to regurgitate it on the air. What do you think? We're reporters during the Obama era? Stenographers at the White House? So here's David Friedman being asked by Mark Lamont Hill, just prove it. Can you just tell us where the evidence is? Watch.
It's been proven with certainty. It's been proven with certainty that the headquarters of Hamas is under the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City. Now, you know what happened a couple of days ago?
Proven by
Hamas had a big...
hold on.
Mark, are you going to let me finish?
I
Mark,
can't allow you to. I
finish.
cannot allow you to say 15 things that are unfactual and not be challenged on them. I'm happy to let you talk, but I'm going to ask clarifying questions.
You're going to tell me what's factual? Mark,
yes, I spent
5 years of my life studying this, living it. When was the last time you were in Gaza, Mark? When was the last time you were in Gaza?
18 months ago. When was the last time you were in Gaza? When was the last time you were in Gaza?
A few years ago.
Okay, so you said Al-Shifa Hospital has been proven Hamas headquarters. What independent reference, what source, what investigation has proven that? Who has proven that it's an Al-Shifa hospital since it's been a proven fact? Who proved it?
So now we're going to get into this basic, Holocaust denying idea that evidence that Israel has shown is not valid. I mean, is that what you're doing? Do you deny that people were raped? Are you going to deny stuff?
Everybody that challenges you is not doing Holocaust denial. You said that it's a Hamas headquarters. I simply asked you for evidence of it. I said who, and you immediately equated it to Holocaust denial.
Israel has presented evidence. Ask the CIA. Ask anybody who studies
the CIA,
this.
sir.
You don't trust the government. You don't trust the American government. You don't trust the Israeli government. Who should we trust? Hamas? You want to trust Hamas? Go ahead, trust Hamas.
Okay. Yeah, ask the CIA. Like Mark Lamont Hill's like, oh yeah, let me just call the CIA. Can you just share with this evidence? By the way, this is the cover, of course, that they use in the intelligence. Oh, intelligence sources say. So then, oh, we can't then verify any of it. Intelligence sources say. Oh, by the way, this whole Holocaust denial thing. Just as a side note here, he's like, what are you, a Holocaust denier? No, but you know who was? Zionists. The Zionists that build Israel when the Holocaust survivors actually arrived in Israel were denied. The Zionists there said, we don't believe you. We don't believe you. And it took about 10, 15 years as stories started finally coming out where they said, oh, maybe that did happen. They literally didn't believe them. So who is the Holocaust deniers that we're talking about here? So that's all in the past, though. The CIA, though, must be now a reformed agency, right? The CIA, all of the lies that the CIA used to tell, all the assassinations, all of that, they're a reformed agency now. They don't lie anymore. Trying to create propaganda to justify war crimes against innocent people, they're different. This week, Israel teamed up with the CIA to push this hospital story hard. Here is Pentagon propagandist Sabrina Singh spilling those same CIA talking points. And this is one of my favorite pieces of video that I've seen in a while, where you actually have journalists asking like tough questions and basic questions about intelligence sources, and just watch as she tries to answer this.
We do have information that Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad uses some hospitals in the Gaza Strip, including the Al-Shifa Hospital, as a way to conceal and support their military operations and hold hostages. They have tunnels underneath these hospitals. And so Hamas and PIJ members operate a command and control node from Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. They have weapons stored there and are prepared to respond to an Israeli military operation against the facility. So I'm just telling you what we as the intelligence community assesses is happening in Gaza City, how Hamas is using these hospitals to operate. But absolutely, we do not want to see a firefight in a hospital where there are innocent civilians. Fadi.
Thank you, Sabrina. So you said earlier you don't have any forces on the ground, right?
That's right.
So I take it this intelligence assessment is gathered based on information provided by Israel?
Sorry, what I just read out, that's from our intelligence community.
So did you have any assets inside Gaza?
We have no assets or boots on the ground in Gaza.
So there's no gathering on the ground about this?
That's right.
So you have no one entering the hospitals to verify this information, right?
We have no boots on the ground in Gaza.
How was that assessment, how did you conclude that assessment based on information received from your Israeli counterparts?
Well, I'm not going to get into more specifics on how our intelligence is collected. What I can tell you is there are multiple agencies, as you know, here within the department and across the administration, multiple agencies that collect and assess and analyze intelligence, but I'm not going to go into any further details on how that intelligence is gathered.
You're confirming that you have no assets on the ground or assets entering to these hospitals to basically confirm the information you're sharing with us.
I will say it again, we have no boots on the ground in Gaza.
Okay, so basically we have none of our own intelligence sources to confirm that, but we're just mouthpieces basically of Mossad, of Israel. Mm-hmm. That's all we are. I saw someone in the chat.
It's that classic we just know trust us defense.
Right.
Yeah.
How
do you know? We just know.
We're the United States. You got to trust the CIA.
We need that to be true.
We need that to be true. I saw someone in the chat just said, "Oh, so Redacted has gone pro Hamas." What a shame.
Who said that?
I don't know. I don't know where in any of our discussions tonight on the show we're pro Hamas. We're literally calling out government propaganda. And I think we've been very clear about Hamas as a terrorist organization and the attacks on October 7th. I don't know where that comes from.
That's the same kind of, though, whittling it down rhetoric is like, if this is true, this is true. And you can't see that this is a complex situation that's costing civilian lives. So if you're someone who likes to reduce things to one side or the other, This is not the show for you.
Yeah, there's CNN. CNN's a perfect place
Right.
for that.
I'm sorry, but this is not a place for people who just need one side to be right and the other side to be wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And also, as we warned people before about bots, there's actually a lot of, we talked about Ukraine bots before. There's very deep intelligence community bots that go on throughout social media, specifically in YouTube channels. So be very, very aware of that when you see that, especially if they're unsubscribed to the show. And in the chat here, just be very aware of that. And by the way, we're not saying that it's not 100% true. In fact, it could be. It could very well be that 100% accurate that, in fact, Hamas has built their headquarters and operations centers under hospitals. What we're asking you, and they routinely, and apparently, and maybe Hamas truly does routinely bully doctors and nurses to keep them from going into the bunkers, as Israel claims. Like if doctors mistakenly make it to the basement, they're turned away at gunpoint by Hamas standing there with guns. Like these are the claims, right? And maybe all of that is true, but we here at Redacted would actually like to verify such claims.
If not only because of the lies we've just told you about weapons of mass destruction and babies in incubators in Kuwait, we've learned, after all of these years in the war on terror, we've learned to ask for proof. Yeah. Sorry if that's upsetting you and it makes us look pro-Hamas.
Yeah.
That's so funny. If you have not learned in the last 30 years on the United States' endless war on terror to ask for proof, you need to get the F out of here. Don't come here on our show.
If you're
Don't be here if you have not learned that after 3 decades.
Last 3 years.
30 years.
Yeah, 30
Sorry.
years. Go back.
After the last 30 years. Did I say 3?
I mean, my brother was in Iraq. Like, you want to hear the stories of lies and cover up. I mean, trust me, it runs deep. So don't be naive. Please do not be naive. And do not take what these government intelligence agencies tell you to your face. They are lying. That's their business. And so we would actually like them to prove it to us. It would seem very simple to do. In fact, actually, Hamas released a statement last night, saying that it's a total lie, that they call on the United Nations to send international inspections team to the Al-Shifa hospital to look for themselves and any other hospital they want to see that there's no headquarters here underneath the hospital, that we did not build a headquarters here underneath the hospital. Okay, but you know what? The United Nations won't do that. The same way they wouldn't do it in Ukraine when called upon to come and inspect. Oh, really? The New York Times and the Associated Press are running out there telling us these are war crimes by Putin? Okay, are there? If there are, we would report it here on the show. We would call Putin a war criminal. Oh my God, they literally attacked a woman's maternity ward. Could you believe what the Russians did here? That's awful. That is a war crime. But the United Nations turned it down. They won't do that. And they're not going to go to this hospital, and they're not going to check. There's been no move from the United States or the international community. Here's what you do. You ask representatives from Russia, the United States, Switzerland, African countries. Get them all together. Get 30 inspectors together of all different nationalities and backgrounds through the United Nations and send them there with their inspection teams to look. And then show us whether or not what you found. It'd be interesting to see. And we would report it here on the show, but you won't do it. Of course you won't do it. So, of course, just like Ukraine, the United Nations will not take them up on this offer. They'd prefer to let the propaganda propagate because it helps with their narrative. One Norwegian doctor who worked there at the Al-Shifa hospital for 16 years. So he knows the hospital. Like, if you work someplace for a year, you probably know the building well. He never once saw Hamas soldiers there, he says. And he had full reign. And by the way, Norway, like the head of NATO is frickin' from Norway, for crying out loud. Not exactly like a anti-Israel country, by the way.
Right, but this is one dude.
One doctor. I just want to point, And this doctor, he had full reign over the hospital, he says. He could go into any damn room he wanted to. And he says he's mad as hell at this propaganda about Hamas using this as a base. Listen to him.
Doctor, when you and I last spoke just a day or so ago, you were telling me that when you've been there, when you worked there for 16 years, you saw no Hamas military operations anywhere near the hospital facility. What do you make of Israel's claims now, its operations around the facility now?
I have to be honest with you. I'm sick and tired of these claims that there is a Hamas command center. We, as I've said 100 times, we have never seen it. We have never seen any high-ranking Hamas people in Shifa. We've been able to roam freely all around. I've never seen anything, nor have my international colleagues. I don't think the Israeli army has any moral standard, because the playbook of war, the Geneva Convention and the Hague Convention, clearly states that hospitals are protected objects, even if there should be some military personnel. So these are the claims, and they don't even need these claims, because they have bombed Rantisi, they've bombed Nasser Hospital, they've bombed the Ahli Arab Hospital without any claims of any command center. So they seem to be attacking healthcare as a part of their strategy. And we know that from 16 years. They've always been attacking healthcare.
One question, though, is Hamas fighters don't have an official uniform or anything like that. So, you know, you don't know what you're seeing.
Exactly.
Right?
He could be totally wrong. He could literally, they could be dressed up as doctors saving lives too. Right.
So
they could be like,
that's just one talking point.
I don't know what I'm doing here. I've got this scalpel. I'm Hamas. If you need to,
I'm not saying that.
But I'm just saying it could be. I don't know what their military uniforms look like. But to his point, they had free reign of the hospital. The argument is that they haven't been able to enter parts of the hospital. They're always blocked from going into certain doorways, and that Hamas regularly holds meetings in the lobbies and down in the bunkers, and they see them there regularly. So what he's saying is he's never seen that, and he's worked there for 16 years.
Right.
So I'm not the doctor. I haven't been there for 16 years, but other journalists who've been in this hospital specifically, like friend of the show, Eva Bartlett, one of the greatest journalists in the world, by the way, one of the bravest journalists in the world. If any of us had a fraction of the bravery that woman has, we would, I don't know where we'd be, but she's amazing. Anyway, according to journalist Eva Bartlett, who was in this hospital and knows it well, she says today that the occupation forces blew up most of the hospital's gates. Shrapnel scattered into those that were present. Medical teams have been struggling to save the wounded as Israel has unfolded with these raids inside of the hospital. The Israeli forces there detained many displaced people, blindfolded them, according to her, and stripped them of their clothes and then led them to an unknown location. The water supply has also been cut off, and there is not a drop of water in the complex, according to Eva Bartlett, who has great sources there and who's been to this hospital. And so that's where we are at this hour on this story. I mean, what does a bunker system look like underneath this Al-Shifa? Send representative to show it to us. Because, maybe Hamas did build this massive underground structure. There are reports, of course, from the 1980s that, in fact, Israel, when they controlled this region, built their own underground bunker system in this hospital. And it was well documented that the Israelis did it in 1983. There are reports of this out there. Now, can we confirm it? And perhaps that's why they are so vehemently, they're vociferously mentioning the fact that there's this structure underneath this Al-Shifa hospital, because they built it themselves in the 1980s when they controlled Gaza. So who knows? But why don't we send international representatives to find out? Is our internet trolls going to know better than actual people who are there inside the hospital?
No, but they think they do.
Right. I mean, keyboard cowboys who sit back in their parents' basement like, that's internet lies. That's internet lies. I'm just reading Twitter this afternoon. We don't know. And we're telling you what firsthand reports are saying, but what the propaganda machine is telling is just as powerful. And of course, you're up against that. So all of these networks are parroting, of course, what the CIA is saying and what Israel is telling. Okay, well, do you take it at face value, or do you question everything? Because we've been played by fools before, and we are being played by fools on a regular basis by these governments and these elites. So don't fall for it. Go ahead, David.
I was going to say, that's why propaganda, that's why they want to silence everybody on social media, because a lot of the pictures they've been showing, like with the bunker in that hospital specifically, an engineer said that is an elevator shaft and outlined all the things that go to elevators and stuff. So that's why they want to silence it, because now if they put out propaganda photos, people can debunk it and people can, say that's not what that is. But then, of course, those are conspiracy theorists. But that's in essence why they want to silence social media.
Right. Yeah. And I think that for us, right, the task is, what do I want to believe based on where I am sort of placing my alliances? And just maybe question that inside yourself. You know, when you see a story and you know that you're biased in one way and think, but do I really know that? And that is an exercise that will make us all better, because I do that every time I come to a story. I'm like, that can't be true. And then I'm like, wait, but what do I actually know? And can I stand back from screaming about it from one side or another? So this is the time, right, for us to say, I'm not buying this babies in incubators Kuwaiti story just yet. I need more, because what I know for sure is that civilians who are innocent are being harmed.
And what we do know, in fact, from that same doctor who worked there for 16 years, got confirmation from his doctors inside the Al-Shifa hospital that, in fact, the incubators have been turned off and powered down. And so that those incubators in 2023 in Gaza have actually been shut off. And those babies that are in those incubators are being placed on the floor, and doctors are doing whatever they can to try to keep them warm. So that we do know for a fact from doctors who are actually working there and in that field, not unlike, you know, totally different from the fake actress that got us into the Iraq war.
Well, we know this, especially because the Israeli state channel today posted on Twitter that they are bringing incubators and food and Similac and baby formula and that kind of thing for these babies. So it's a tacit admission that babies are being harmed. So, you know. Yeah,
they published it on their own Twitter feed.
On their own Twitter feed.
The Israeli government did.
Right. They're going to run an extension cable.
They're solar
from
powered,
Israel.
maybe.
Yeah. Audio says question the media, but don't question Redacted. Really? Well, no, you can question us all you want, but we're not. I don't understand the point.
Maybe
there.
they're giving us props. Thank you. Let's just leave that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so,
thank you.
If you want to see this for yourself, it's at IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, and yeah, they posted boxes of medical supplies for these babies in the hospitals in Gaza. I mean, one way to make sure those babies are safe is not to bomb them. That's also a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also while the IDF is in there delivering incubators and Similac, maybe they could take some pictures of the Hamas bunker.
They could,
and put those out there.
Right, but we do have reports.
If they're in there, they might as well.
We do have reports that they're clearing out the hospital, removing people, and there are sources saying tonight that they're worried that they're setting up like an operation. They're setting up like a faux set operation. So yeah, we got everyone out. Okay, set up stuff. Let's take some pictures. Now we can put it out to the media. Now let's invite the journalists back, because they arrested a number of journalists this afternoon as well who were there. So they arrested all the journalists. They're going to set up shop and do whatever they need to do. And then maybe they'll get the white helmets involved, because the white helmets are good at faking things like they did in Syria. And then they can come in, and then they can have the media, take pictures. Like, oh my God, look what we found. Look at all these. Look at all these closets full of munitions. There's grenades where there should be bandages. Oh my gosh, look at this. So anyway, our point is question everything. Question everything.
And yeah, question us too.
Sure.
Go ahead. You should.
Yeah. Well, and I was just haven't confirmed it, but like there was a video I saw on Twitter where Israeli soldiers were putting the Israel flag on top of the hospital. Like I said, I haven't confirmed that, but if that's true, then that just shows their true intent. Like,
well, we already had yeah. We already had Israeli soldiers planting the flag on the beach in Gaza, and so we already reported that. So who knows? But this is a fast-moving story. We wanted to bring you what the government is saying, what these government mouthpieces are saying, and look at their track record, and then also cross-reference that with the facts on the ground right now, and bring that to you. And again, all we're asking for here on the show is let us know, right? Let us know. If the United Nations, wouldn't it be great if the United Nations would go there and actually report on this and actually do an investigation? That's all we want. And I think Hector in the chat said it great. He said, I think we can all agree. Don't we want the killing to stop? And I think we can all agree. Whether we disagree on any other thing, yes, we all want the killing to stop. That would be great. Can we do that? Maybe start there, and then we can talk politics and propaganda later.
No, because we saw these marches and these protests in Washington where the chanting was literally no ceasefire. So unfortunately, we don't all agree. But I think most of us
the new Speaker of the House even was given a speech and said something about no ceasefire, and the crowd erupted into chants of no ceasefire.
Yeah.
I mean, they need to change that hashtag of no ceasefire to just kill civilians. That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
How well would that go over?
That's where something like Borat would do that. He'd like come out and start giving a speech and people would be like, yeah, no ceasefire. And then he would start saying something like, kill civilians, kill. And people would be like, yeah, kills. Wait a minute. Is that what I'm actually clapping for? Because that's exactly what you're clapping for. Anyway, let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. We've got a lot more news to get to here tonight. We're going to talk about Poland next. Poland, interestingly, has really put their foot down against the U.S. and Israelization of Poland. And they have a lot of things to say about Ukraine. They held their Independence Day marches over the weekend and celebrations, and quite a number of protesters against the United States and Israel basically trying to stick their nose into Poland. So we will go to Poland to bring you the updates. Is Europe turning its tide against Ukraine tonight? We'll get there.
We're also going to talk about civilians being killed in Somalia, how a new report was published and showed that the U.S. military did nothing wrong, even though a woman escaping a bomb site with her 4-year-old child was targeted by a drone. But, no harm, no foul there, I suppose, for the U.S. military. We're also going to go down to Ethiopia and see what's going on there because peace talks have continued for the last 2 weeks. We have a guest on. We'll see if she is optimistic about those peace talks. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Brick House Nutrition, because you've heard about those weight loss injection drugs. We've talked about them extensively on this show. They produce incredibly fast results, right? But they are also highly linked to all sorts of disease and stomach pains and undesirable conditions. They work by lowering glucose and reducing fat and curbing appetite. But if weight loss is your goal and you're not into the shots or cancer, a group of doctors created something remarkable. This is a weight loss supplement called Lean, and here's why it's so encouraging. Study ingredients in Lean have been shown to help maintain healthy glucose levels, help burn fat by converting fat to energy, and reduce appetite. So if you struggle to lose weight and have healthy glucose levels, burning fat and eating less are the 3 keys. Adding Lean to a healthy diet and exercise program could be a game changer. So check it out. You can get started with 15% off and free rush shipping. Go to takelean.com, enter the code REDACTED. That's promo code REDACTED at takelean.com. Again, this is just to help you control the glucose levels when you eat normally. Statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. The product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease, and it's not a substitute or alternative for care from a healthcare provider. So talk to your doctor about this and maintaining healthy glucose levels in general. Again, visit takelean.com, enter code REDACTED. One more time, code REDACTED at takelean.com.
Well, is Europe finally waking up and saying enough is enough and turning away from Ukraine? What about Poland specifically? Over the weekend, large protests, part of their Independence Day celebrations, signs saying enough and down with the U.S. Israelization or U.S. Israelization of Poland's foreign policy. Are they saying enough is enough? There's been a number of signs in Poland over the past few weeks against Ukraine and against the foreign policy in Ukraine. So what is going on in Poland? This is quite a shift, it seems to me, or those of us from the outside. Mike Krupa is a journalist, host of Votum TV in Warsaw, Poland, and he joins us now from the getting more cold by the minute up there in Warsaw. Nice to see you as winter is starting to creep in on Poland. Mike, good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah, we're getting the Hunt for Red October opening scene vibe slowly here in Poland. Not yet snow, but definitely getting cold. Great to be back on the show.
Well, you can buy some of that American natural gas at 50% over the price tag now after we blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. So you have that to look forward to. That's capitalism in action for you.
Well, we're just waiting for that freedom gas, and I hope as we mentioned before the show, the Hans Mollman, the Ukrainian Hans Mollman, who was apparently accused of doing this with a bunch of his teammates on a sailboat. I kind of feel sorry for the guy because the way they're dumping Zelensky right now borders on, on the tragic, but in a way it's also humorous. So we're just waiting for that freedom gas to come and for the money to get into the coffers where they need to be.
The freedom gas, I love that. So let's talk about Poland. Noticing these protests over the weekend, it was pretty startling to see these signs and I might have butchered the phrasing of this, but these signs read, stop the U.S. Israelization of Poland's foreign policy. What does that mean?
Yep, you got that right. Well, what happened was every November 11th on our Independence Day, there's this huge rally in Warsaw, which has been taking place since 2010. It's called the Independence Day March. And it's sort of a gathering of right-wing organizations, nationalists, patriots, and conservatives who basically want to rally that day in favor of Poland independence. So it usually has Eurosceptic. It's got this Eurosceptic line embedded in it since the beginning. But it's very ecumenical in the sense that anybody who considers themselves to be a patriot and against the European Union can attend. So what happened at this year's march was one of the factions that took part, they held these huge banners. One said Pole exit, as in Poland has to exit the European Union. And the other one read, as you mentioned, stop U.S. realization of the Polish raison d'etat, which basically means stop being subservient to Israel and the United States in our foreign policy. Now, that triggered the reaction from the Israeli ambassador in Poland, Yakov Livny, who wrote on X that, I quote, stop U.S. realization of the Polish raison d'etat, called these patriots on Polish Independence Day in Warsaw. They fight against three evils, the U.S., the EU, and Israel. No words. Well, my comment to that was he forgot about one other evil, which is Ukraine, because we're also fighting against that evil. But yeah, it got him triggered. And it was actually a fairly public statement made by one of the factions of the Confederation Party, which actually enlarged its parliamentary presence during the elections of October the 15th. Yesterday, we had the swearing in of the new parliament in Poland. We had the election of the new Speaker of the House and the vice speakers, or as we call them, marshals in Poland. And the leader of the faction that had those banners during the march is one Grzegorz Braun. He's an MP, and his faction in the Confederation Party was enlarged by 3 more MPs, so I guess he became stronger in parliament. But yeah, it did get noticed by the international media. Obviously, you had the usual calls of anti-Semitism and so on. But in the current context, in the context of Ukraine, in the context of what's happening in Gaza, I think that was a very prescient banner, and I think we need more of those in Poland.
So I want to drill down on what this means, because I think it's very childish. People throw around anti-Semitism. That means they want to shut down conversation about it. I think people who just throw that term out there, it's the same thing by just yelling out Putin apologist. They don't really know what they're talking about. They probably haven't read a book in the past 6 months in their lives. So I always discount those arguments because it shuts down conversation. But what's really at the heart of this foreign policy debate there? Is it that they're tired of being bullied by Israel and the United States, being told what to do? Obviously, the United States, of course, has multiple, military bases. NATO has set up military bases in Poland, almost like an aircraft carrier, the way that RFK Jr. described Israel to the United States, essentially an aircraft carrier for United States foreign policy. So can you drill down on that? What does the anger mean? What is, for people to go out on the street and to protest, there's got to be something deeper there.
Well, the anger is that, paradoxically, on Independence Day, we are celebrating in a country that is not fully independent when it should be independent, because any form of subservience to a foreign capital or any form of foreign military presence on your soil automatically discounts you as an independent country, by simple definition, by simple logic. You are not dependent if your foreign policy is basically dictated or semi-dictated by people in a different capital or overseas, for example. And I think military presence on your soil, foreign military presence, is the ultimate sign of you not being independent. So I think that's what they were hammering at, that on Independence Day, we want to show that Poland should be independent. We can be partners with everybody, but the fact that our government is so subservient to instructions coming from think tanks or the State Department or the Pentagon, and sometimes in many cases also subservient to the foreign policy priorities of Tel Aviv. Let's not forget that in 2017, there was a huge anti-Iranian conference which took place in Poland. I think it was in January 2017. Mike Pompeo arrived. What's his name? Rudy Giuliani actually made a speech in Warsaw Square where he basically, talked about destroying the so-called Iranian regime. And there were actually representatives of the terrorist organization Mujahideen Khalq present, who were also calling for the abolition of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So there are many cases. America is obviously the big enchilada because, we can consider the Polish Republic to be a satellite state of the United States, unfortunately. But because of that, there are also inroads being made by the Israeli authorities, where they also tend to see the Polish authorities, not distinguishing whether they're left wing or right wing, and trying to tell them what to do in terms of internal Polish policy, but also foreign policy, as we saw with regards to Iran.
Also, there was criticism from Poland to the former Polish Western territories in Ukraine, and criticism of the Ukrainian government and their handling of those former Polish territories in Western Ukraine. You and I have talked over the past year about what will happen to Western Ukraine once this war is over. Will it be absorbed by Poland once again? What will be left of Ukraine if it continues to throw men and resources against the Russian wall? What will Poland do? So can you explain the criticism? Number one, I think it was around Nazis specifically, but it was about the handling there. But also, what will happen to Western Ukraine in the future here if Zelensky is pushed out?
Well, one of the big problems that we've had with Western Ukraine, or what used to be Poland, basically, is the fact that during the Volhynia massacres, which took place in the early 1940s, 1943 especially, where over 200,000 Poles were murdered by the Ukrainian nationalists and their allies, under the tutelage, obviously, of Nazi Germany. A lot of the victims of those crimes have still not been dug up from their graves and exhumated. So because we want to conduct these exhumations as a Polish state, we've been asking for this to the Ukrainian side for some time now. The Ukrainians are refusing to let the Polish inspectors and the archaeologists to go in there and dig those bodies up and give them a proper burial. So that's one of the things that is a sort of a dividing line between Warsaw and Kiev, and that's one of the things that's become very public in recent months, I would say, because we're sending all this money and equipment to Ukraine, and we're not allowed to properly bury the dead that were murdered as part of the genocide conducted in Volhynia. Now, the question of what becomes of Western Ukraine is still a very open question, because that all depends on who will govern Kiev in the next couple of months, whether that will be Zaluzhny, whether that'll still be Zelensky, or whether that'll be somebody who overthrows one and the other and comes to some sort of compromise with the Russians, whereby they will not feel compelled to cross the Dnieper River. But let's say, realistically speaking, that the Russians do not, and I think that's what's going to happen. They're not going to cross the Dnieper. The Kiev regime is going to collapse, and we're going to have a rump state in Western Ukraine. I think we're going to have a situation similar to what we had in Kosovo in the 1990s. So we're going to have a lot of these Azov battalion type guys running around with a lot of guns, a lot of weaponry. They'll be very reminiscent of what we saw in Kosovo with the so-called Kosovo Liberation Army, which was sponsored from top to bottom by the Central Intelligence Agency. And at one point they were designated a terrorist organization, but when they found out they could be useful against Slobodan Milosevic, they were used, by the deep states of the West against Yugoslavia. So I'm afraid that we might have literally on our borders a chaotic semi-terrorist narco state full of weapons, and that's just going to generate not only refugee problems, which we're already seeing in Poland, but national security problems of the most profound character. So I'm afraid this is going in the right direction, and I'm not so sure if that wall that was built recently on the border with Belarus should not be moved a little bit more south and put on the border with Ukraine.
Now, you said I'm afraid this is going in the right direction. Did you mean that, or you meant this is going in the wrong direction?
Maybe I misspoke. I meant that it's going in that direction in the sense that it's going in the direction of Western Ukraine becoming a sort of narco Kosovo terrorist state. Yeah.
Sure. From your mouth to God's.
Because I don't see any other option at this point.
No.
Yeah.
And this is what this is what NATO loves to do, right? I mean, there's a long history of trashing countries in this very way and leaving wreckage in its wake. And hopefully this doesn't run up against Poland. And what you guys have to deal with there. So we'll be watching it very, very closely. One of the most astute, one of the smartest guests that we have here on Redacted, Mike Krupa. We appreciate it. I thought some of what you said today was absolutely brilliant. And I think it's very, very important for people to realize, how can you be an independent country when you have foreign countries' military bases in your backyard? What would we do in the United States if China decided to set up shop and have military bases dictating our terms in our own backyard? Unbelievable. Mike, great to see you. As always, thank you so much. Stay warm up there.
Thanks. Have a great one. Take care.
Thanks, Mike. And I mean, Or setting up camp in San Francisco. Like, I don't know if you saw the images out of San Francisco, Xi Jinping's appearance, and cleaning up, of course, all of the refuse and trash and homeless people all throughout San Francisco, and then rolling out the red carpet. I mean, Chinese flags just like lining the streets of San Francisco. It's like, I guess it's a dream come true for San Francisco liberals. Here they get their dream. It's a communist party showing up in San Francisco. Anyway, we've got more news. By the way, I should mention Mike. Congratulations. He's about to get his doctorate.
Oh, that's so exciting.
So, yeah, very, very smart guy. So Mike Krupa, by the next time he's on here, he will be Dr. Mike Krupa.
He's great. He always, tells it like it is and makes you understand what the issues are. So,
yeah,
one of my faves.
Dr. Mike Krupa could have a debate with Dr. Jill Biden.
Okay.
That'd be fun to see that.
Sure.
We've got more news to get to here on the show. We're going to look at the civilians that have been targeted in Somalia. The Pentagon's fine with it. They do their own internal reports, and it doesn't matter that they kill civilians. They get, they report on themselves. They get to wipe the slate clean. It doesn't matter. We're also going to look at the violence in Ethiopia and the peace talks there. What is unfolding? Could we actually see peace in Ethiopia? So we're covering everything tonight. We're covering Israel. We're covering Poland. We're covering Somalia. We're covering Ethiopia. And we're going to look at all of that. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Factor, because this holiday season, you might be looking for nutritious, convenient meals to keep you energized on those jam-packed days. It's very busy this time of the year. You're rushing around, kids have school concerts and all that sort of stuff. And you can have that peace of mind knowing that you've got some ready-to-eat meals delivered right to your front door. And our friends over at Factor can help you fuel up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, you'll eat well, you'll stay on track with your healthy lifestyle while tackling all of those holiday to-do lists and all the family obligations right now. Skip the stress of meal prepping over the holidays with Factor. Choose from 35 plus weekly flavor-packed, fresh, never-frozen meals that support a healthy lifestyle and meet your meal preferences, all delivered right to your door and ready to eat in 2 minutes. So if you're looking for calorie-conscious options over the holidays that also taste great, you can try their dietitian-approved Calorie Smart meals, around or less than 550 calories per serving. If you need an extra boost to support your wellness goals and feel your best during the holidays, try their Protein Plus meals with 30 grams of protein, more per serving. That's right. Or their lunch-to-go options. With Factor, you can rest assured you're making a great choice, with sustainable choice. They offset 100% of their delivery emissions and source 100% renewable electricity from their production sites and offices. This November, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered right to your door, ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. So head to factormeals.com. It's right there on your screen. You get 50% off. Just try it. Try and get 50% off that order. Use that code redacted50 at factormeals.com/redacted50 to get 50% off.
All right. Well, the U.S. Army once again is getting away with killing civilians. No one will be punished based on a new Pentagon investigation of the killing of at least 7 people, including a 22-year-old mother and her 4-year-old child, a little girl, in Somalia in 2018. The Pentagon report was published recently by The Intercept. The Pentagon concludes no one did anything wrong at all. We're going to bring you this report. It's not happy reading, but I want to present it here to you for 3 reasons. First of all, I want us all to support peace abroad no matter what. That's our agenda. So I guess you could call, yes, we're biased towards peace. Also, these are the things that inspire terrorists abroad and at home. The drone strike that we're talking about was targeting al-Shabaab fighters. According to Scott Horton's reporting, dozens of Kenyans living in the U.S. have actually returned, and also Somalians have returned to fight for al-Shabaab. So these things do inspire terrorists. And it's not just like, oh, that's so far away. That ideology won't, even though we'll rile up these terrorists, they're far from me. They're not necessarily. And third, the wars on terror do not work. They make things worse. No one has ever really tried peace negotiations with extreme groups. We just keep trying to kill them, inspiring people like them. and then also harming civilians in the meantime. It's more like a starfish that can regrow a limb than a spider that you can just kill. The war on terror should be a cautionary tale for Israel especially, and not a template. So let's look at this story. In the spring of 2018, a woman and her 4-year-old daughter were traveling to see her brother. She couldn't reach him on her phone, so she hitched a ride in the back of a pickup truck with some men. The brother actually passed the truck going in the opposite direction and tried to flag them down, but they didn't see them. This is the brother. We don't have images. Now, the family doesn't have images of the woman and the child. The U.S. military does, but they were redacted because she was blown to bits. Her family, again, has nothing, but the report has images of her, but we don't get to see them. So this is the brother still suffering from the grief of watching his sister get blown to bits. Then the U.S. targeted the truck that she was riding on with drones under intelligence that the men in the truck were al-Shabaab fighters. They didn't know that a woman and child were in the car, but when the bombs exploded, her and the child ran away, and they circled back another drone to target her, even though she was running away. The brother saw it all happen. He says he was just horror-struck with just pieces of his sister strewn all over the place. It's so horrifying. Now, the U.S. military, they won't face any condemnation for this internationally, but they did commission what's called an AAR, or after action report. Here is the conclusion. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Clayton, can you read just the top of that?
Yeah, it says a review of the targeting procedures used to include strike authority and approval processes. So during my review of the redacted strike, I reviewed the strike procedures with redacted personnel. They confirmed that the procedures used for the strike were the standard operating procedures utilized for the redacted strikes. Based on my review of the procedures, interviews with personnel, and review of strike videos and chat logs, nothing in the strike procedures caused this inaccurate redacted call.
Okay, so what they're saying here then further, can you read the second part? Sorry, I'm
okay. The second what part? The
just,
B?
If civilians were injured, just read up to the next redacted part.
Okay. So if any civilian personnel were injured or killed, a determination of the identity of those personnel and how and when the determination of identity occur and the likely cause and extent of the injuries, I assess that 1 female and 1 child was killed in the strike. I base this assessment on the redacted team's extensive review of FMV of the strike by the most experienced FMV analysts in the redacted.
Okay. So what they're saying here is they know that a woman and child were killed, but they're not exactly sure who she was or what her identity was, and no bad calls were made. Here's the Pentagon saying that some of the team was inexperienced, so maybe that has to do with it. See what I've circled here? It says, while neither were actually used for updated redacted, I found that concerning the daily teams, they didn't have the most up-to-date software. Now, see up here, it says who had what experience. One person had 17 and a half years of experience, which is called FMV. It's motion video, analyzing motion video. But one person had only 6 months. So maybe because the person on that team was so green. But again, it says they didn't have updated software, so that was concerning. And time was the biggest factor as well. Now, okay, what is this civilian software that they have that doesn't tell you that the people running from the truck is a 4-year-old child, right? They have a civilian scanner that they just were not able to use. Analysts told The Intercept, there's no way you wouldn't know that a woman is carrying a child, especially because she was wearing like a flowing green hijab. And so what is it they need to not kill people? What is it that was missing here that they just didn't have? And also, why was time of the essence? Because the truck was traveling down a pretty long road. Why were they in such a hurry? The truck just was keep going. It wasn't like a crowded urban area that they were going to get lost like an Indiana Jones film. Now, this is very much like a story that Chelsea Manning tells in the book that they released recently. While serving as Bradley Manning in Iraq, he reported that he had prepared reports multiple times showing that one target lived in one area but then moved. And then the military went in and targeted whoever lived in the old house and killed who had lived in the old house, having not read Chelsea Manning's or Bradley Manning's report. And this is the kind of thing that inspired him to become a whistleblower, because he was sick of his intelligence not being used and so many civilians dying. A lot of this report that we're talking about is redacted, like this. Super helpful, right? Take a look at that. What I think that probably is are some images of her, because they even have close-ups of her eyes getting into, reportedly, obviously, I can't see it, but there were reportedly images of her body as well and the child. It's worth noting that CENTCOM announced this strike publicly, saying that they had killed 5 people, but no civilians. So we at least knew about it at the time, but the Somali press refuted that. They said absolutely civilians were killed, and that's the only reason the Pentagon investigated. It wasn't until a year later that we got this report admitting that civilians were killed. Can you read that headline for a second?
It says U.S. acknowledges civilian deaths in Somalia drone strike. U.S. acknowledges civilians in Somalia drone strike. The U.S. has admitted that a woman and child were killed by an American drone strike in Somalia last April. It marks the first time America has admitted to causing civilian casualties during its air campaign in Somalia.
Okay, so at least there was that admission. The woman's family says they've never been contacted by U.S. officials for an apology. Now, when the report concludes that the military did nothing wrong, okay, that's their own internal conclusion. They're never going to face any international outrage or investigation over this. But a drone pilot and strike cell analyst who served in Somalia in the same year of this accident told this to The Intercept. Can you read that, please?
Some who took part in America's drone war in Somalia dispute that when I went to Africa, it seemed like no one was paying attention. The drone pilot and strike cell analyst who served in Somalia the year Lou and Miriam were killed told The Intercept. He spoke on the condition of anonymity due to government secrecy surrounding U.S. drone operations. It was like, we can do whatever we want. It was a different mindset from the special forces I worked with in Afghanistan. There was almost no quality control on the vetting of the strikes. A lot of safeguards got left out.
And in fact, that is what Scott Horton reports in his book exactly about the Trump administration. Clayton's going to read that to you as well. I'm sorry, honey. I'm suffering.
Yeah, I know. People are like, your voice is, just
it's
awful.
hard. I'm sorry. I'm going to do my best. You
All right,
read
just
this
move
part.
that away if you got to do your thing. All right. So in Scott Horton's book, Enough Already, he writes, President Trump escalated the war, expanding the number of airstrikes, special operations forces, both those fighting and training the Somali National Army, and sent regular infantry there as well. He also signed orders designated Somalia as an active war zone, devolving strike authority lower down the military chain of command and removing some restrictions on who can be targeted. Can't we just pull out? The president repeatedly asked his staff in 2017. You have no choice, replied the then Secretary of Defense Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis. So Trump escalated the war, killing many but accomplishing nothing in his term. Trump's administration took more drone attacks on Somalis than Bush and Obama's combined. Terrorist attacks in territory held by al-Shabaab only increased.
Okay, so the war on terror brings more terror, something I've been trying to prove. Are you listening, Israel? Again, this is another example of what is called precision paradox, because precision strikes don't work. What, Clayton, is a precision paradox?
A precision paradox is a situation in which the failed promise of precision strikes, one strike, one kill, generated a creeping wave of destruction. In fact, even though the Pentagon says the 5 people targeted in the truck were militants, the Somali government says that there were 7 in addition to the mom and the daughter. So I love that they're like, oh, we couldn't really identify who was even in the truck to begin with.
Right. Take a look at this Intercept report. It says they knew at least 4 of them were al-Shabaab, but it looks like they also had a poet and someone else who is a tax collector. So those people have never been acknowledged. Right now, all we're getting is the mom and the child. So this is something that's dangerous, obviously, for everybody, right? Because it makes our military less safe. as they get this reputation for just targeting civilians.
Yes, and this is so it's really awful because then if they
just disintegrating,
I know,
guys.
people are like they're so sorry. It's like get some vitamin C. We can't understand you, Natalie.
Okay.
John says we're trying, but we can't.
I'm
understand
not
you.
able to make this point all the way, and hopefully you read about this in the newsletter this morning because I'm not hitting a home run here, but I'm bringing you the voice that I can. I do encourage you to read the report from The Intercept and the military report as well, because, anything that makes civilians less safe makes us all less safe, and it emboldens these terror groups that it's actually targeting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So this is dangerous for everybody. It makes our military less safe. And I just want to put a fine point on this. Our men and women in military who were actively involved in Afghanistan, and they were many of them brave. I know U.S. Marine pilots who carried out amazing missions and who targeted and went after terrorists specifically, and saved innocent people's lives. I mean, this is not to tarnish any of those individuals who fought bravely, but when you literally have the ability to go in there with no sort of checks and balances and no real consequences, unlike what the special forces were serving and dealing with, it makes it incredibly disheartening. And then their after action reports are being led by a group of people that can just whitewash it and slip it right underneath the table.
Right. Do you think anyone's there like, we need to really write this so that this never happens again? That's not the spirit of this report. Clearly.
No, it needs to be like a completely separate third-party independent body that's doing these after action. But then, of course, it's not going to be. It's all going to be redacted information. They'll get one page that it has like one freaking word on it, the word and like that's all they'll be able to.
Right.
Assess.
There's a lot of that. Yeah.
All right, get your voice ready. Take a break here. Get your voice prepared for the next segment. You got to do.
All right. I'm going to let Clayton tell you about our friends.
Yeah, I will. Don't worry about it. We're going to talk about Ethiopia in a second, but we're also going to talk about our friends. We're going to talk about the violence in Ethiopia and whether peace talks are unfolding up there. And for those that were joining us late, sorry, Philip, I'm jumping all around here. I know Philip and David.
That's okay. I'm keeping up with you.
David must have left. He's like, I can't understand.
We're chasing him off.
Yeah. So, because people want to follow up on the hedgehog story. So, Philip, if you got that video prepared for us here. So, earlier I was asking you at the beginning of the show, Grover, my dog, was like this afternoon obsessed with this. We thought it was a porcupine. Now, we don't know what the heck it was. And he was going crazy with it. And he was out there for 4 freaking hours, and he wouldn't leave this thing alone. He built a moat around it. Take a look at this. So people are like, you got to get Grover away from that. That's a hedgehog. It can be very dangerous. And then a person just said, no, that's a Portuguese porcupine. Don't worry about it. They're harmless. They don't do anything. So it's a Portuguese porcupine. Don't worry about it. So, okay. So I guess it's not a hedgehog after all. So it's totally fine. Don't worry about that after all. Anyway, but Grover's fine. I think he's sleeping now. He exhausted himself. Okay. So let me tell you about our friends over at Moomoo, shall I? Because right now, if you open a free account with our favorite trading platform at Moomoo, you can get 16 free stocks when you sign up. And SoFi is one of those stocks. That's right. SoFi is one of the free stocks that you get by opening your account, making your initial deposits. And all you have to do is keep your funds in your account, whatever you deposit, just keep it in there for 60 days. And then you get access to those stocks for free. Then you can do whatever you want with it. I mean, you can sell the stocks. You can treat it like a savings account, keep those stocks in there for a few years and let them ride. We got these new CPI numbers this week, and that's great news for SoFi, actually. It's great news for real estate. And so SoFi stock we don't have no idea what stocks could do, but could be very good news for SoFi. So if you got a free SoFi stock, just, keep it in your account and let it ride for a little while. Anyway, it's our favorite trading platform. You get all sorts of access to level 2 quotes, additional information and data that you wouldn't get from other big platforms. And it's totally free when you sign up. Download the app on iOS, on Android, on your PC, on your Mac, wherever you want. Just download it. And you, my friends, can get access to these 16 free stocks. All you need to do is go to redacted.inc/Moomoo. That's redacted.inc/Moomoo. It's very, very easy to do. Go to redacted.inc/Moomoo to get your 16 free stocks when you sign up. Again, redacted.inc/mumu.
All right, well, we're going to bring you an interview that I did earlier today about Ethiopia, and I just feel the need to tell you that this was taped just a few hours ago because my voice was better earlier in the day, and I don't want to make you think that I miraculously, although it feels better now, so maybe
You sound better now.
Maybe I should circle back around to the Somalia piece. Do you want to start all over again?
Do the whole Somalia
I'm
piece
just
again?
kidding.
No,
I'm
no,
kidding.
we don't.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
That woman got killed. Like, I feel like I didn't do her justice. So I hope that you at least will seek out the report on Somalia because it's an awful story. But for now, we're going to talk about Ethiopia. We have a wonderful guest. It's Sinead Sine. She's speaking on behalf of the genocide prevention in Ethiopia. So please enjoy this interview that we did earlier. And I am going to go make some hot tea with lemon. Well, there are peace talks happening regarding the violence in Ethiopia that's been raging for months, if not years. Representatives from Ethiopia's Oromia region went to Tanzania for a second round of talks with the Ethiopian government to try and end decades, really, of fighting. The talks are being negotiated by peacekeepers from the U.S., the East African trade bloc IGAD, and Norway. Here to discuss violence in Ethiopia and the state of these peace talks is Sinead Sine. She is speaking on behalf of the genocide prevention in Ethiopia, which I believe, right, is an American human rights group. You're based in the U.S. Is that correct?
That's correct, Natalie. Thank you for having me again. And yes, we're based in the USA, but it is an international group that has hubs and working groups all over the world.
So something that you're busy doing is trying to raise awareness about the violence in Ethiopia. You say that other conflicts in the world are overshadowing this. That's clearly true. Can you explain the conflict and the current state of the peace talks, please?
Okay, thank you. So there are two things going on concurrently. This peace talk that the government is holding with the Oromo Liberation Front / Oromo Liberation Army is something that has been going on, I think, for more than a year. There was a time when they went to Seychelles. I think Norway was the chosen mediator, and there was back and forth over the years. And there is the actual calamity that is going on where the government has opened war in Amara region. And this is after the northern Ethiopian war that spanned Tigray region, Amara region, and Afar region was concluded 2 years after its start on November 4, 2020. So they literally concluded it through the Pretoria Agreement with TPLF, where Amaras and Afaris were not represented on November 4, 2022. So now this other agreement again is going on concurrently, while the war in Amara region is waged by the Ethiopian regime against the Amara people with the Oromo Liberation Front. So as it is, it's a very complex situation where OLF was actually massacring and killing ethnic Amaras in Wallagga and Metekel, which is on the west side of the Oromo region, and the so-called Benishangul Gumuz region, again in the west of Ethiopia. So in both cases, when we look at the Pretoria Agreement that happened with TPLF in South Africa in 2022, and now the ongoing agreement with OLF, in both cases, Amaras were victims, and they were not, and in case of the war also, actors, but they were not represented in both cases. Specifically with this ongoing talks with OLF, it's the most confusing one because there has been, especially lately, in the beginning, when this government took the reform, the reformed, position since 2018, all the massacres were just singularly being blamed on OLF. But over the years, recently, there was huge evidence by the survivors themselves that this is state-sponsored, that there is coordination between regime forces and OLF. There were times when they would turn off telephone services, electricity, water before OLF people went in and attacked. So it is very confusing what they're agreeing on about, since they coordinated on many of the civilian attacks in those areas. So to a lot of us, not just at the GPE, but the Amara human rights groups at large and political groups in Ethiopia in general that oppose this regime, for them, it looks like and sounds like the regime is consolidating its agreement and back channeling with both TPLF and OLF so they can all together go and attack and finish off the war against Amaras.
Okay, now the government says it just doesn't want a repeat of what happened in Tigray to happen in Amara. But by that, they mean that the Tigray army had full control of the region and had been, by many reports, blocking aid to civilians, and civilians were caught in the middle. Is that actually a fair comparison, what's happening to the Amara region?
Not at all. If that was the case, Tigray region is now fully controlled by the belligerent that was part of the war, the Tigray People Liberation Front, which turned into the transitional government in Tigray. That's not what's going on in Amara region. In Amara region, actually, the people that went up and tried to defend themselves from the onslaught of the TPLF forces during the Northern War, they were actually blamed for causing human rights abuses, while all they did was defend themselves within their territory. And on top of that, now the government is blaming them for an uprisal, when what actually happened was the government was only selectively trying to unarm Amaras, even if the Pretoria Agreement was about, the Tigray forces to be unarmed first. That didn't happen. The ongoing civilian massacres that amount to genocide in the rest of the country outside the region, the Amara region, has exasperated. And all these displaced people that are pushed into the Amara region and already under, a disadvantaged group have been without any support, and the situation pushed Amaras to a point of no return where they had to fight for their survival. So to compare a government that actually is chosen and fought along with in Tigray with in case of the Amara, where they're fighting against the government that is imposed on them. The Amara regional government itself is an enemy to the people, and the federal government is sending their air force, their mechanized forces, drones, etc. They're full force on the people. There is no aid going into the country. There is a siege. Amaras cannot go into the capital city, and they're literally being hunted down elsewhere in the country as well. So the only thing that the people have is their self-armed group called Fanos that are protecting themselves at best.
Right. Okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about the Fanos? That you say they are fighting on behalf of Amara, but there are reports that Fanos are finding their own fight against the army in the medieval holy city of Lalibela. Just last week, that's what residents there told Reuters. The government said, actually, no, that's peaceful. So who are Fanos, and are they fighting two wars at the same time, or are these the same wars?
No, there's a single war, and that is the fight for survival for Amaras. So what's going on is the government has huge. Seriously, Natalie, I would say if a foreign invader came into the country, there would be no one to protect the country. The full force of the nation, whether it's the intelligence forces, money spent for propaganda, for drone oil, for bombs, etc. Everything is going against Amaras, and Amaras, regardless of their three major divisions, like they follow three major regions, religion, this Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and all of them, regardless of religious differences or minor like dialect differences, etc., they're standing together to survive this onslaught. So what happened in Lalibela is no different from towns that elsewhere in Amara region. So the Fanos, whenever the abuses by the occupying forces, the regime forces, become so great, when they go door to door, gun down young people for fear that they may join the Fano, the Fanos would come into the town, control, get things in order, and quickly leave because they don't want civilians to be hit because of them. They don't want to make urban civilian population as a shield. They don't want to use that. And they're known for this. Throughout the war, they had a single bank hasn't been touched, a single infrastructure hasn't been touched. At best, in rural areas where they control, they actually tried to continue farming and schooling activities. So in case of Lalibela, it's unfortunate because it's one of the wonders of the world, and it needs to be protected. But the attack on civilians from regime forces has become so great that they have to go in, protect the people, and leave before the government took it as an excuse to to hit this cultural heritage and also kill more civilians.
Okay, thank you for breaking that down, because the tribal warfare is confusing if you are not familiar. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the global response, because by many reports, there are 9 million people that have fled or are in need of humanitarian aid. But the world is busy looking at now Israel and Ukraine. Last month, you say the mandate for the Body International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia was established by the UN Human Rights Commission to investigate crimes against humanity in Ethiopia, and it was terminated when no one came forward to sponsor it. So talk to me a little bit about the extent of this and the lack of interest in it.
You're right. It's very frustrating, because even human rights, even if we do know in all those Western nations, I mean, all over the world, the people of any nation actually want the best for the people of any other nation. So it's not the citizenry that we're frustrated about, but governments truly, they always bring their geopolitical interests forward, of course. So the ICHRE was established during the time of the Northern War. And with its timeline itself, we were really fighting for it to, hindcast its start time a little bit further, because human rights, violations didn't start on November 4, 2020 in Ethiopia. So at least starting from the so-called reformed government took power in 2018, in April, where the first massacre happened September 2018. So at least going back 2 years would have at least 4 years would have at least captured some of the horrific, human rights violations and crimes against humanity. It's not just that. It was also limited in special extent. It limited itself. So it limited itself in in Tigray region, Amara and Afar, with its budget only extending to abuses that happen mostly in Tigray and then not anywhere else. But a lot of crime against humanity has happened in Welega, in Matakal, etc., which later on their mandates has extended, but they were not budgeted to look into it. So when you look at it all in all, these mandated like special rapports or commissions, etc., seem to be established to limited in scope in a certain way so that they can cover certain incidents. And if we do really want to address human rights abuses and really get transitional justice to victims, regardless of their ethnic background, whether they're Tigrayans, Afari, Amara, Oromo, Somali, etc. We have over 84 ethnic groups in Ethiopia, and over 10 of them are actually very, very involved in a very complex, groupings of this special targeting, and some are targeters and some are targeted. So with Amaras actually undergoing genocide. So we believe that it is important for an independent body, a UN mandated body, to study the situation, get the actual timeline, get the actual special extent, get the scope right, so that nobody is left out by technicality, and so that we get justice. And the other important thing is that there was no political groundwork being done, no enough political pressure applied. So the commission members or any one of their technical researchers were not allowed on site. So whatever they were doing at best could be used for political pressure, maybe if those other countries choose to use it, and the Security Council maybe, but never for actual transitional justice. It's not something that can be used at court, because it was a bunch of remotely done research. So I think it's very important to look into this, not just for the sake of delivering justice, but because there's a lot of ongoing human rights abuses right now in Ethiopia, and the government is, at the position of protecting its position at any cost. So lately, what happened was. The countries at the Human Rights Council didn't sponsor, no country has sponsored to continue the mandate of ICHRE. But what the EU chose to do is to kind of give a huge financial package or pledge for the Ethiopian government itself to facilitate a transitional justice framework. So there's only one thing that I want to say here, especially for Amara victims. This would never work because the framework through which they want to do this, the ethnic constitution, Amaras were not even on board in 1994 when it was established. So it's right away will disadvantage Amaras to start with. And for the rest of all the other victims, because most of the incidents that are in question, regardless of non-state actors taking part, are state-sponsored. There is no way this government is going to make an impartial body that could deliver transitional justice for all victims. And finally, there is no legal framework that can look at crimes against humanity in a sufficient way in Ethiopia because it's not fully contained in our legal framework in Ethiopia. We don't have the articles that can actually be used as a basis of judging this crime. We don't have it in Ethiopia. So that's why it won't work to entrust this government to do either transitional justice or national dialogue that precedes that, none of that.
So that's what you think will come of the peace talks because the Ethiopian government is participating. Your expectations are that they cannot come to a solution that would bring any kind of peace to the Amara region. Is that correct?
So yeah, what I expect out of the peace talks is that a bunch of groups that had minor problems within each other are coming together to stand against what they think is their bigger problem, which is Amaras. Because basically Amaras stand against this genocidal system, which is an ethnic apartheid, which each of the separatist groups, whether it's TPLF, OLF, or the party itself at the helm, it's their bread and butter. That's what they get their budget. That's how they divide the nation and rule. So they would do anything to come together and stop this movement that is rejecting the system.
So then, are there any Amara representatives at this peace talk then that can give any hope to this region? Are you saying that they're not even represented?
No, not at all. So okay. They have OLF and government representatives being represented, but the victims in those regions, I think this shows that the Amaras in Oromo region, they are non-existent to them because they're labeled, it doesn't matter for them whether they agree about this peace agreement or not. The fact that a government is agreeing with a party that it dubbed as terrorist, using through its own People's Representatives Council, and they didn't even, undeclared that they didn't remove that label before they went to talk to them.
Well, thank you for bringing us this story. You can follow more online on X, the Genocide Prevention in Ethiopia, or Senate on X or Twitter as well. Thank you for always keeping us abreast of what's going on here. And it's definitely worth noting where the world's attention is. So it's always good to talk to you.
Thank you very much for having me at the Redacted. Thank you, Natalie. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, that's going to do it for us today at Redacted. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for staying with us on these heavy topics and bringing your expertise and your willingness to learn and your great attitude. We are so thankful for your presence every time you show up. So thank you again. Hey, you can also join the Redacted community if you want more of where this came from. You get access to us with other live streams, other exclusive content. You can find it at redacted.inc. It's about the price of a cup of coffee per month. And we upload things there that we do not upload for this. Remember, Redacted is a free show. The newsletter is free, but there are other ways you can support us. So check it out. We really appreciate it if you like what you see here. Like the show, share the show, all of that good stuff. We will see you here tomorrow. Remember, Redacted is live every Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.